5 students from St. John's Ravenscourt were there on a field trip. CBC's Alana Cole's been following this story for us all day. She joins us now live from the area near where it happened. Alana?
Emergency crews were called just before 10 this morning. The Children's Hospital alerted to a potential mass casualty event. Hospital officials say the injuries aren't life-threatening. I spoke with a 10-year-old boy outside the Children's Hospital today. He says that there were 3 grade 5 classes on a field trip. They were on a bridge. It started cracking and a lot of people fell. 17 kids aged 10 and 11 years old rushed to hospital. These parents outside the children's emergency trying to find out what happened and if their child is one of the injured.
My son is not here. They said it might be in the school, so I'm going to go to the school and just see if he's there, and then I'll find out everything. Like how it is happened, and I was just worried about all the kids. Just make sure all the kids are okay.
Emergency officials say they were called just before 10 this morning when children fell from a structure. This is what the area inside Fort Gibraltar looked like from above this afternoon. Officials say the fall somewhere between 4 to 5 meters. Dr. Karen Grip is medical director of the Children's Hospital Emergency Department.
Could have been so much worse. We were prepared for the worst. We heard initially 30 and then we heard 20, and I believe that the final number was around 16 or 17.
The students were on a field trip. In the morning, officials said 3 of the children were taken to hospital in unstable condition. Grip says most of the injuries were orthopedic, for example, broken bones, but none life-threatening.
All we heard was that there was a fall from 15 to 20 feet. There was a wooden structure that fell, and some children fell. Some children fell directly, and there were also some children who slid down on the structure from the injury patterns that we saw.
She says one child is being admitted to hospital for observation and will require an orthopedic surgery. The rest either have been discharged or will likely be today. Some are still waiting for X-ray or CT scan results. One adult was taken to hospital and is in stable condition. Some surgeries were delayed to make sure there was enough room if needed. A statement from the school says students who didn't need to go to hospital went back to the school where faculty, staff, and counselors were caring for them until their families could pick them up. Workplace safety and health and city inspectors are looking into what happened. The city says repairs were last done to the walkway in 2013. Janet.
Thank you so much. That's the CBC's Alana Cole reporting live tonight from just outside Fort Gibraltar. An Alberta mining company wants to drill thousands of wells east of Winnipeg. Its goal is to extract highly pure, highly valuable silica sand. The mining company says this could be worth billions for Manitoba. But as CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, some rural residents fear sand mines will compromise their only source of drinking water.
This field south of Vivian in the arm of Springfield used to be a forest like this. Heavy machines moved in to clear the land and drill wells like this one. Josh Mustard and his wife Georgina live with their 8 kids on the acreage next door.
Maybe head down the power lines. I'll show you the site.
The site is a proposed processing facility for a Calgary mining company called Silica. This is what the mining company's after. 99.85% pure silica sand from about 150 feet below the surface.
Well, this has been here since, I guess, early 70s.
Josh Mustard doesn't want this plant next door, and he's opposed to removing sand from an aquifer that stretches across southeastern Manitoba.
There's no replacing it. You know what I mean? Like, once it's gone, it's gone. That's the problem with mining. Like, you're removing a resource.
Silica originally came to Manitoba to look for frac sand for use in oil drilling. They ended up finding silica so pure it could be used to make solar panels.
That sand is not easily obtainable around the world. The deposit in Manitoba is probably the largest high purity scalable deposit in the world.
Silica has spent the last few years amassing mineral rights claims across southeastern Manitoba. Silica plans to suck out the sand by drilling 16-inch wide wells down through the clay and gravel just below the surface, down through a thick layer of porous limestone, and then punch through a relatively non-porous layer of shale and end up in a layer of sandstone. The company then plans to pump air down into the pipe and then suck the sand up to the surface. The sand will then be transported to Silica's processing facility, where it will be dried and loaded onto rail cars. Any excess water will be cleaned and pumped back into the ground. Silica is seeking approval from the Clean Environment Commission, that's Manitoba's environmental regulator, to remove up to 33 million tons of sand over the next 24 years. They want to drill up to 300 wells a year for a total of 7,200 wells over the lifetime of the project. Critics fear all these wells could degrade the quality of water below the surface of southern Manitoba. The limestone layer before the ground is formally known as the Red River Carbonate Aquifer. Lower down, the sandstone layer is the almost entirely separate Winnipeg Sandstone Aquifer. Critics fear thousands of punctures in the semi-permeable shale between the two aquifers will cause the waters to mix, potentially affecting water quality. They also fear the potential of underground collapses after the sand's removed.
The science has never been tried.
Bradley Simmons lives on 60 hectares of land in the arm of Springfield.
Getting approved for 25 years seems like a long time. And for something that has never been done before, why couldn't we just do a couple years, trial purposes, test the well water, see what happens underneath us?
Simmons is among hundreds of people opposed to the mining proposal. They formed an opposition group called Our Line in the Sand.
Ethically, this project shouldn't even be considered. It is taking place directly in the only freshwater drinking source for southeast Manitoba.
Brent Bullen says more wells won't affect water quality in the aquifer. He insists his company's plans are not experimental.
What we've done is we've taken existing technologies and we've just applied them in a different manner.
Some experts hired by the Clean Environment Commission are skeptical. So are Josh and Georgina Mustard.
We bought this place to secure for our family and our kids. If this goes through and things go wrong, then what? Then we have to leave? We have to uproot everything we know?
The Clean Environment Commission has to issue its decision about this proposal by June 22nd. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, south of Vivian in the arm of Springfield.
A Manitoba Grand Chief says First Nations may be re-examining their relationship with the Catholic Church in the wake of disturbing allegations. A 48-year-old Roman Catholic priest is charged with sexually assaulting an 8-year-old girl. Investigators believe there may be more victims. CBC's Josh Crabb brings us the latest.
The chief of Little Grand Rapids First Nation is calling on the Roman Catholic Church to leave the community. It comes after the priest of St. John the Evangelist Roman Catholic Church, Father Arul Savari, was charged with sexually assaulting an 8-year-old girl. RCMP say it happened here in Little Grand Rapids, a remote community in eastern Manitoba. Officers say the girl was touched inappropriately while helping clean the church. According to police, she told investigators the priest then forced her to stay in the building. When she got away, the girl ran home, told her mom, who then reported it to police. 48-year-old Savari has been charged with 5 offenses and remains in custody. Little Grand Rapids Chief Oliver Owen says this incident has some people questioning the church's role in the community.
There's shock in the community right now. I had some of the community members came to see me this morning, and one of the things they're saying is not to allow the church to do any more in the community.
The Archdiocese of St. Boniface, which runs the parish in Little Grand Rapids, hasn't said if the church will keep a presence in the community. On Tuesday, in a prepared statement, the Archdiocese expressed its deep sorrow to the 8-year-old, her family, and the community. The church says Savari has been suspended from all ministerial activity and has been forbidden from contacting former parishioners and children. Southern Chiefs Organization Grand Chief Jerry Daniels says if leadership from Little Grand Rapids wants the church removed from the community, the church should listen. He says other First Nations communities may be examining their relationship with the church.
I think they need to take a good look at the nature of the relationship. How is it benefiting our communities? And I know that there's some important work that happens with the Catholic Church and others. But we have to really evaluate whether or not that needs to continue or not.
The RCMP thinks there may be more victims with connections to the religious community in Little Grand Rapids and nearby Pungassi First Nation. The Mounties say no further charges have been laid. They're still investigating. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A 24-year-old man is charged in connection with a stabbing death early yesterday morning. Winnipeg police believe two groups were on Sauder Street near Burroughs when they got into a fight just before 4 a.m. 22-year-old Alan Henry Anderson was stabbed and he died in hospital. Police located a suspect in the 300 block of Mountain Avenue a short time later. Corey Dylan Watt faces a charge of manslaughter. New research labs, new single-cell analysis machines, new capacity for genomic sequencing. All of them new tools for our province in the battle against cancer. Our Matt Humphrey has more on a massive funding announcement at Cancer Care Manitoba.
A machine is used for genomic sequencing, just one weapon in the war on cancer. And now, thanks to a new donation, researchers are getting a lot more ammunition for that war.
The significance and the enormity of this generous gift from Paul Albrechtsen Foundation cannot be overstated.
It's the single largest gift to a medical organization in Manitoba history, $27 million to Cancer Care Manitoba. The money comes from the Paul Albrechtsen Foundation. Kirk McManus is a senior scientist with the Research Institute. He says the gift will transform cancer research in Manitoba.
We will now be able to do leading-edge experiments that takes advantage of patient samples that are brought to us to be able to better understand the aberrant genetics that give rise to these diseases. And with that, we can ideally begin to develop new ways or strategies to combat some of those early events.
Albrechtsen's son, Scott, was there to announce the donation. He says the gift comes after a lifetime of his father's altruism.
I'm really proud to support this initiative, and I think my father would be as well. It's progression in research, and that's something that my dad was really excited about.
Paul Albrechtsen made his fortune in trucking, and in his later years donated generously to Manitoba's health sector. He died in 2019. Dr. Sri Navaratnam heads the institute.
And the Paul Albrechtsen Foundation's gift enables us to fulfill our commitment by investing in research, which is the pathway to discovery and excellence in cancer care.
Money from the historic gift will be used in a variety of different ways. $17 million will go towards upgrading existing floors in the Cancer Research Center, bringing them up to date with current scientific standards. $4 million will go towards single-cell testing. 5 different machines that explore how single cells interact with each other inside tumors, a key part of cancer research. Nearly $3 million will go towards genomic sequencing, exploring that and what part it plays in the picture. And nearly $4 million will go towards the Western Manitoba Cancer Research Center in Brandon, the Center for Hope. Matt Humphrey, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The RCMP is just now releasing a few details about the utility terrain vehicle crash that killed a 12-year-old girl earlier this month. It happened in the RM of Glenella Lansdowne in the Neepawa area on May 1st. The 12-year-old and 2 14-year-old girls were all thrown when the UTV slid into a ditch and rolled. RCMP say the girls were not wearing helmets or seatbelts. The 2 14-year-olds were seriously injured. The 12-year-old died a few days after the crash. The task force responsible for cutting the surgical and diagnostic backlog in our province fired back at critics today. Leaders say there's a role for public and private clinicians and say some of the criticism around private contracts is harmful. The CBC's Ian Fraze joins us now live in the newsroom to explain all this. Ian, what is this task force leadership defending?
They're defending how they've taken their approach to cutting the backlog. Much of the attention around this task force is focused on the use of private contracts, both within Manitoba and out of the province. Today, the task force announced they're making progress. That's where surgical lead Dr. Ed Buchel defended the use of private contracts. He says the outcome's the same regardless of location.
Emotions run crazy high when we talk about privatizing our system. We are all heavily invested in our system. We are the system. But publicly funded, public oversight with private facilitations of those care are by us, Same patients, same wait list, same time. So the rhetoric around that is harmful.
The task force says it's eliminated the pandemic backlogs for MRIs and some other areas, but there's still lots of work to be done.
Now, Ian, I understand the NDP pledged today to have all its MLAs and candidates march in pride parades this year, and it called on the Progressive Conservatives to do the same. What was the PC response?
Gender Equity Minister Rochelle Squire says she and some of her colleagues will walk, but she doesn't support making participation at Pride mandatory.
I think that it's always been a choice that people have made, and I believe that that is the respectful approach to take, in that if someone wants to march in a parade, they should come out of love. And that is really the spirit of Pride. Love is love.
That PCMLAs might feel forced to be at something they don't want to attend. And that's really sad and shameful, because there is not an MLA in this legislature who doesn't have members of the queer community as part of their constituency.
Liberal leader Dougald Lamont will be at Pride. He doesn't agree with making it mandatory, saying some could be busy, have other prior commitments. He says, though, that walking shouldn't be seen as a litmus test for supporting the LGBTQ community. Janet.
Thanks for this, Ian. The CBC's Ian Frey is reporting live in the newsroom tonight. Meteorologist John Sauder joins us now. We were going to talk about how this was a quieter day in terms of watches and warnings, but now one's popped up.
Yeah, just west of us, out toward the Killarney, Boissevain area, south of Brandon. So we've got this one little storm that's just the storm that could and would, you know, and it's just sitting right over this one region. I'll show you exactly where it is. Not a lot of action here in the Red River Valley, but when you look to the west, you see these very isolated storms. And just a short time ago, a few minutes ago, right around Minto, Souris, Hartney, the Fairfax area community. This is a very slow-moving storm. The main threat with this storm, obviously lightning, but nickel-sized hail and some pretty heavy downpours. But look how isolated they are. This area is getting hit with rain, but Brandon in the clear right now, and you can see Killarney is in the clear. Boissevain getting a bit of rain at the moment, but that shaded area is a warning where there was no severe thunderstorm watch in place ahead of time. So that's kind of interesting. We don't often see that. Usually there's a watch and then the warnings start to pop up. So all of this will dissipate as we head on through the evening hours. We reached my forecast high of 28, still sitting there, and the winds are dead calm. They have been for 2 hours now. Notice the dew point temperature at 12. Now, I always say this in the summertime. When dew point temperatures get up around 17, 18, 19, we start to really feel the humidity. That's what I'm expecting to move into our region as we head into the day tomorrow and certainly toward the weekend. We've got a system in North Dakota. It's going to start to spread some warmth and some, well, humidity our way, more moisture. This is Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. There's a chance of a shower out to the west of Winnipeg. And then on into the afternoon, we start to see kind of a repeat of yesterday. What's missing in Manitoba is a trigger, a cold front, something to get things lifting. We'll see a lot more of that in Saskatchewan tomorrow. That's where it'll be showers and thunderstorms. Here, yes, we have some thunderstorms, but they'll be a little less organized and they will be hit and miss storms. So a day kind of like yesterday, but I don't think as energetic. And we'll have a look at the storm energy in a second. Friday, starting with sunshine, we get to 30 degrees, and I think most of the action here is to the south and to the west of Winnipeg, and then off into northwestern Ontario as well for Friday afternoon, and then things quiet down once again as we get into Friday night. So storm energy is convective available potential energy. That's called CAPE. And tonight, not much of that. Usually there isn't in the evening hours. But as we get in through the day on Thursday, you can see these colors are getting into that moderate range, and we'll start to see some of that in the afternoon on Thursday with showers and storms once again. 14 tonight, just like last night, 19, so warming up really early tomorrow, 19 by about 8 o'clock, 28 in the afternoon, some showers and storms around in the afternoon, and then in the long range, we really start to heat up. 28 Thursday, as mentioned, 30 on Friday, 33 and a chance of a shower on Saturday, Janet.
So all those people out doing activities on those big charity walks and things are going to need lots of sunscreen and lots of water on the weekend.
Lots of sunscreen, lots of water, you're right.
We'll check in with you a little later. Thank you. Fires continue to burn out of control in Nova Scotia. Some 200 homes and businesses have already been damaged or destroyed near Halifax. Help is on the way, but questions remain about what more they can do. The story after the break. Those fires in Nova Scotia just keep burning out of control, and the weather there is not helping. One fire near Halifax has already damaged 200 homes and businesses. The CBC's Brett Ruskin has the latest.
Help is here in Nova Scotia. More help is on the way, but will it be enough? We know that there are at least 17 firefighters heading up here as we speak from New York and New Hampshire to aid and assist the fire crews that are already on the ground here. There's equipment from Ontario. There are water bombers from New Brunswick and from Newfoundland. There's fire crews and trucks here from Prince Edward Island as well, as people from across this region come together to fight these fires. And they're going to have to deal with a difficult day in the next 24 to 36 hours because the wind is high, the temperature is climbing, and the humidity is dropping down. All a recipe for very difficult, very potent conditions. And that's the concern. That's the reason why there's been so many restrictions brought into place by the province. So the woods are closed with no activities able to take place, hiking, biking, camping, hunting, fishing, anywhere in Nova Scotia. But people were still lighting fires. Even though there is a burn ban, there were at least 8 fires lit in the past 24 hours. So today, the province announced that the fine for breaking that burn ban increasing from $237 to $25,000.
I do not know what they're thinking. I just don't get it with what's happening in this province right now. Anyone who burns in this province, anyone who disrespects the province-wide burn ban, can be subject to a $25,000 fine.
As for resources, still the province and the city of Halifax are looking for federal assistance.
We don't know all of the resources that the federal government has at their disposal, but they do. So now isn't the time to wait and see, wait for Nova Scotia to ask this specific question or this specific. No, this is not the time for that. It's time to pitch in with whatever you have.
We're still waiting to hear if the federal government will meet all of the requests from Nova Scotia government officials. Meanwhile, firefighting still continues here. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
And now there's a new wildfire causing concern in Alberta. It started on the weekend. It's forced the entire community of Fort Gibraltar to flee. That hamlet is located about 300 kilometers north of Fort McMurray. People who live there are being transported out of the area by air over the next 72 hours. That evacuation will take place in stages with priority given to the elderly and the vulnerable. Temporary accommodations are being set up in Fort McMurray and also Fort Mackay. Crews are battling the 3,000-hectare blaze from the ground and the air. There are 64 wildfires burning in parts of Alberta, 18 of them out of control, and about 3,500 people remain on evacuation order. Canada's economy performed better than expected in the first 3 months of this year. It grew 3.1%, according to the latest data from Statistics Canada. Higher exports and household spending are being credited with fueling that growth. CBC's Peter Armstrong takes a closer look.
It would be a stretch to call this good news, but it's certainly better news than we'd been expecting. We know the economy is slowing. Higher interest rates are biting into indebted households. High inflation is squeezing everyone. So we actually expected a slight decline in the month-over-month numbers for March, and instead they came in unchanged. And rounding out the first quarter of the year, January and February were quite strong, but a modest gain there is also slightly better than expected. There are some weird kind of contradictions within these data. Household spending on both services and goods was up on the quarterly measure in spite of that inflation and those rising interest rates. But it also showed signs of leveling off when we look at the more granular level numbers in March. And in March, mining, quarrying, and extraction were up, but, accommodation and food services, manufacturing, those were both down. And looking ahead, the advanced estimate for April shows another burst of growth. So that up and down constant sense that the economy is changing underfoot sure doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
David Johnston says he will continue in his role as special rapporteur investigating allegations of Chinese interference. Johnston released a statement after MPs voted in favor of an NDP motion calling on him to step down from that position.
Yeas pour 174, 174. Nays contre 150, 150.
Je déclare la motion adoptée.
MPs voted 174 to 150 in favor of the non-binding motion to remove Johnston. Opposition MPs are demanding Trudeau call a public inquiry into foreign interference in Canadian politics. That's something Johnston rejected in a report last week in place of public hearings. He said that he respects the right of the members of the House of Commons to express their opinions, but he has a mandate from the government and a duty to complete it, he says. The RCMP is planning to bolster protection services to senior federal ministers and public service in response to growing threats of violence. CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian has more.
From Justin Trudeau wearing body armor in 2019 during a campaign stop to a protester pelting rocks at him 2 years later during the next election, high-profile incidents of politicians facing violence have been on the rise. To the point, sources tell Radio-Canada and CBC, the RCMP are preparing new units to offer cabinet ministers and bureaucrats extra protection.
If you go back 25 years, there were a lot of very unhappy people, but the disconnect that we sometimes talk about, I don't think was there. And the ability to organize quickly to sort of bring together protests and whatnot was not there.
But changes since then have made the detection of real dangers trickier, he says.
Their ability to communicate and to sort of rev themselves up in a way that sometimes involve violence is the really big difference.
Something acutely felt by Michael Wernick when he was Canada's top bureaucrat.
Physical threats to people are rare. But it's difficult to know whether that person who's online attacking somebody is just a benign keyboard warrior or whether it's a premonition of a real threat.
Since his retirement, he said the pandemic only heightened tensions.
I know for sure of people that decided not to run again in the 2019 election and the 2021 election because they just found the entire environment intolerable.
Cabinet ministers say they've been feeling it too.
I have to say the political landscape and the threat landscape for politicians, I think of all political stripes, has changed dramatically since when I was elected in 2015.
Cabinet ministers that are targeted are ones usually that are female or racialized, so if I'm feeling it, probably means that others are feeling it more than I am, so it is a worry.
We represent something bigger than who we are when we're in the office that we serve, and it's really important that we as a country deal with this new phenomenon.
Sources say the new RCMP plan has been discussed by Cabinet. Before it gets approval, the Treasury Board would need to have its say. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
We occasionally hear of weird things happening on our transit system. The Toronto Transit Commission is investigating what appears to be a person setting off fireworks on a city bus. CBC's yet to verify this video, but the TTC said it's aware of a couple of recent incidents of fireworks being set off on its buses. Police have been contacted. The TTC says luckily there were no serious injuries. Russia's reporting more drone strikes in its territory, this time in the southern part of the country on 2 oil refineries, not far from one of the country's largest oil export terminals. CBC's Dominic Velitis reports.
Russian officials claim drones hit 2 oil refineries in the early hours of this morning. One of those, we're told, struck the Afipsky refinery, sparking a fire at the site. It was later extinguished. No casualties were reported. But at about the same time, we're also told a second drone broke apart and fell on the Ilsky refinery, which is about 20 kilometers to the east and which has been repeatedly attacked already this month. No damage reported there from last night's incident, though. Now, both of these sites are about 100 kilometers from the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk, which is one of Russia's most important oil export gateways and helps bring 1.5% of global oil to market. It's not known who launched these drones last night, but Russia has accused Ukraine of increased attacks inside the country, including, of course, yesterday's large-scale drone attack on Moscow. Meanwhile, there's been no word from either Kyiv or Moscow regarding recent UN proposals to protect Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia plant, Europe's largest power plant, which remains on the front line of this conflict. Yesterday, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency laid out 5 principles to avoid what he called a potential catastrophe at the site, which has been occupied by Russia for more than a year now. Essentially, the UN is demanding there be no attacks on or from the plant and that no heavy weapons be based there. But neither side has yet committed to the plan, which is a huge concern. You may remember how power has been cut to the plant several times due to shelling over the past year, which is required to cool the reactors and prevent a meltdown. Dominic Velitis, CBC News, London.
A para-hockey player from Quebec is making Canadian history. We're going to meet the first woman to play with Team Canada at the 2023 World Para-Hockey Championship after the break. A para-hockey player from Quebec is making Canadian history. 20-year-old Raphaëlle Toussignon is the first woman to play with Team Canada at the 2023 World Para-Hockey Championship, happening this week in Moose Jaw. CBC's Sam Sampson has her story.
history hits the ice. Raphaelle Toussignan is the first woman to play with Canada's national para-hockey team.
When I started telling people that's my goal, I want to be on the men's team, people thought I was crazy or naive because I was young. And at the end of the day, I never stopped believing in myself that I could achieve that.
Her family believed it too.
The first time she tried the para-hockey, they tell me in a couple of years I will be at the Olympics.
She told you that?
Yes. She told us that. She's very far now.
Internationally, para-hockey welcomes men and women athletes on the same team, on paper.
I know that our sport is considered mixed, which is kind of, I don't know, because only like 3 women went to the Paralympic Games so far. So it's not very mixed, so that needs to change.
There are many people who hope Toussignan's presence at this championship gets these jerseys at a women's tournament in the 2030 Paralympics.
But to qualify, there would need to be at least 6 global teams by 2025. Right now, there are 5.
So having RAF competing at this event, we really want those other 6 nations at this event to recognize women can play, women can compete. Go back, develop your women.
You look at North America, and we've done a great job of really pushing that narrative of equality in sport, and I'm not sure that every other country has taken that same approach, and that's really the challenge right now.
Toussignan's focus is on growing the game, but also her own skill set to make the Paralympics in 2026.
Get faster, stick handling, a better shot, like the type of thing that we never stop improving.
While Toussignan speeds up her game, her ice time here could speed up equality. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan.
So cool.
Yeah, it looks like a really difficult game, doesn't it?
Yeah, I imagine. She's going so fast.
Yeah.
Our weather's not cool. It's warm.
Yeah, it's warm. We've had a warm day here, a quiet day here in the Red River Valley, but as you know, I've been watching some storms to the west, so let's have another look at the radar. There's a sort of a broad view right there, and you can see well out to the west in Saskatchewan, almost near Regina, we still have a severe thunderstorm warning in effect. That's that yellow shaded area there. Now, we had one here right around Minto, and it has ended. The storm is still happening. Still some rain, still some hail possible out of this. It just, the storm is weakening a little bit, doesn't meet severe criteria. So this is where the action is right now, south of Brandon. Brandon's in the clear, and this is all moving up into a northwesterly direction out of North Dakota tonight. That system bringing in some humidity into the province as we head through into tomorrow. So we're going to start to feel a little less comfortable with our 28 degrees that we'll have tomorrow. And that's what we have right now, 27 over in Steinbach, a little warmer in Morris. And then you look at the rest of the numbers across the south, and pretty much everyone enjoying a warm summer day, although we've got those little bits of storm activity out in the southwest. 26 in Kenora right now. I don't know if you heard, Kenora region. After midnight tonight, no open fire. So there's a restriction and a ban in effect in northwestern Ontario now due to the dry conditions and some fires that are burning north of that region. 6 degrees in Kenora and Churchill right now, 17 in Thompson, and 22s and 23s right now in the western sections of northern Manitoba. Just like that again for tomorrow. And here is the forecast now for northwestern Ontario. Some evening showers or storms around Fort Frances. Otherwise mid-teens and just partly cloudy skies. In the southeast, we're looking at pretty calm conditions tonight. We'll see partly cloudy skies overnight. In the southwest, similar conditions. There's still a chance of an evening shower, of course, around Brandon. And some of those showers I just showed you might make it up into the Dauphin area. Only about a 30% chance of that happening. And then across the north, we have just partly cloudy to almost clear conditions. Down to 0 tonight in Churchill. Tomorrow, 13, a sun-cloud mix, but winds gusting to 60. There are the temperatures I talked about in the west. 19 for Thompson. Lots of sunshine out on the east side of northern Manitoba. And then here across the south, we're looking for another rather warm day, 26s and 27s for the most part. A little bit cooler in Swan River. It's the afternoon, and we start to see some scattered showers and the risk of a thunderstorm, and we could see some severe thunderstorms forming again tomorrow, much like yesterday, and pretty much the same is true for northwestern Ontario. A little bit cloudier around Kenora and around Red Lake. Now, yesterday I was driving into downtown. I looked off a bridge toward the Forks. I saw the water buses sitting there. So I thought today, why not go down and talk to Gord Cartwright, the owner-operator, and get a view of our city from our waterways. Have a look. Gord, what a beautiful day to be on the river. Thanks for inviting us aboard today on the Splash Dash water service.
Yes, it is a gorgeous day today, isn't it?
Yeah, nice to be on the river. You know, this is a great way to see our city. You've been doing this for how long now?
31 years.
31 years.
31
Fantastic.
years.
You've seen a lot of things, which I'm going to ask you about. But
okay.
Tell me a little bit about the service. You got in this year, what, May long weekend?
Yeah, we had a normal start, May long weekends when we started our tour boats.
Yeah.
The water was still high, but we have a temporary docking system that we can operate during high water. But now the water is actually coming down to normal.
Yeah.
So we can get into our normal dock situation, and a lot of more boats can come to the dock and visit the ports.
Now, you've been doing tours with groups of people, but the water bus service starts later, right?
Right. The water bus starts July and August.
Okay.
And it'll be running hopefully 7 days a week, and running from about noon till about 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah, but the tours must be popular. I'm wondering the ratio between, in the summertime, between tourists and people from Winnipeg, and what do you think that would be?
Oh, it would be about 50-50.
Yeah, I'm surprised, you know.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I thought it'd be more tourists, actually. What's the number one comment you get from people who are maybe a local and they come aboard the bus?
Well, the number one comment is how beautiful the city is from the waterways.
Yeah, it really
That's
is.
the number one comment.
And how different it looks, right?
And how different the city looks, yes. It looks so fresh and clean.
Yeah, fresh and clean, yeah. And it looks like only a few days until the walkway will open up and we'll see a lot more traffic down here. Have you seen different things over the years? Changes on the river or changes in the city, things like that?
Well, through the years, I've seen a lot of erosion on the riverbanks. That's one thing. And secondly, there's been a lot of flooding, you know, during the 30 years I've operated.
Yeah.
I've only had maybe 3 normal years from start to finish.
Wow.
And the other thing with the city of Winnipeg is all the beautiful buildings and the condominiums that are being built along the waterfront drives. It makes the city a lot prettier.
And do you find that with more people living downtown in condos, that there's more traffic down here once the water levels drop?
Well, sure, there would be, yes. And that's the whole goal of the city, and a lot of cities now, is keep people coming downtown.
Yeah.
All the workers are staying at home now, aren't they?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. The last time I occupied this very space, I had skates on my feet. So, yeah. I mean, our waterways are a wonderful way to see the city, whether you're on skates or skis or, you know, on the water bus. What are the hours of operation and prices and things like that? Can you talk to us about that?
Well, for the water bus that runs in July and August,
yeah.
It starts around noon till about 9, and they service the docks every 15 minutes, and the cost will be $5 one way and $5 coming back.
And it goes all the way down to Hugo Street?
Right, you go from Hugo to the Exchange for $5, or from Hugo to the Forks for $5.
Oh, that sounds great. I've done that in the past, where you go down to Corden and you get on the bus and come down and have dinner and then go back for dessert down in Corden or ice cream or gelato or something like that.
Right, yes.
And make it an event through the evening. So that's fantastic. Your website, remind us of that.
Our website is www.splashdash.ca.
Thanks, Gord, for this.
Okay.
Great way to get away from the desk, away from the office, and come for a boat ride.
Wonderful, yes.
As the people we love get older, more and more of us will know what it's like to live with mobility issues or hearing loss, vision loss. Why thinking of ways to remove barriers and make our world more accessible should be a priority for all of us. Next. This is National Accessibility Week, as well as Manitoba Access Awareness Week. Today is also Easter Seal's Red Shirt Day of Action for Accessibility and Inclusion. Lindsay Cook is Director of Provincial Services for Manitoba Possible, and she joins us now. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So in 2023, what outstanding accessibility issues do Manitobans still have to overcome?
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, you know, we've come a really long way in our province, and we should be proud as Manitobans that we were the second province in Canada to have comprehensive accessibility legislation, but there's still a lot of work to be done. As an organization, of course, we have our own priorities about what we believe will make a big difference for Manitobans. And so I can talk a bit about those today. You know, we have a real concern about the access to wheelchair services in our province. We run a Manitoba wheelchair program where over 20,000 Manitobans access wheelchairs through that program. And due to flatline funding, we're really having a hard time making sure that Manitobans have access to mobility, which, as you know, is a basic human right. They're waiting longer for wheelchairs, they're waiting longer for repairs, and this is really cause for concern because we know that it's really important for their livelihood and wellness to have access and easy access to their mobility. We'd also like to see comprehensive legislation for children with disabilities that really protects and enshrines the rights of those families to thrive in Manitoba with disability as a part of their life. And thirdly, you know, this is something that you've probably heard from lots of nonprofits, but sustained funding, adjusted for inflation and that's predictable, is crucial to continue the incredible impact that all nonprofits across our province have on the economy and on the availability of social services for Manitobans.
Let's talk a little bit more about that legislation. What difference would that make? What would it enshrine and what would it practically change?
Right. So currently there isn't a piece of legislation that protects the rights of children in our province to access things like important programs and services, to access the same quality education experiences. There are some piecemeal legislation pieces that may speak to a part of that, but nothing as kind of a single source of truth that would help really make sure that all families across our province have the same access to those supports and services. Demand for them is growing year over year. We are serving and seeing more children and families with disabilities at quite a significant rate. And so as more people need access to these really important services and need to exercise those rights, that means that there's fewer really to go around. And so we believe that Manitobans value the rights of children with disabilities and want to see us be a great place to raise a family, whether or not disability is a part of that. So a single source of truth or a piece of legislation would really provide clear direction about what you should expect as a child with a disability, as a family that has a disability, as a part of their makeup, and so that it can be equally applied across the province as well.
This is, of course, a provincial election year. What would you like to have Manitoba voters be thinking about?
Great question. So I'd love to just draw attention to the great work of Disability Matters Votes. This is a grassroots initiative that was a collaboration between Abilities Manitoba and Barrier Free Manitoba. They've been very active in the last 2 elections. I know they're doing tons of work right now to establish their priorities and to, you know, really hear from the community and make sure that it's representing the opinions of Manitobans with disabilities. They'll be launching any time now, so I'd really encourage all Manitobans to keep an eye out for their campaign and to find ways that they can contribute to and get involved with making sure that people that are running for office in Manitoba are very well informed of the priorities of Manitobans with disabilities and the people that care about them.
Lindsay Cook, Director of Provincial Services for Manitoba Possible, thank you for your time today.
Great, thanks so much.
Your 7-day forecast and daily lift when we return.
Well, as you can see, the heat is really going to continue and really ramp up toward the weekend, but so is the humidity. Showers, thunderstorms likely tomorrow. These chances on Friday evening and Saturday afternoon are quite slight. Still warm Sunday and Monday, and then more storms are possible by Tuesday next week. A couple of people in Nevada discovered a surprise guest sitting in the back seat of their car.
What?
Yes.
Here's your daily lift. So they called the police officers who did this. They attached a rope to the door handle, and then they stood way back and pulled it open. What could be so bad that they'd have to... It was a bear in the back of their car. How did the bear get in the car?
That's what I want to know.
That's
Janet.
what I want to know. Spring is apparently an active time for bears in the Lake Tahoe region. You know how they tell you an active, like, don't put food out.
Yeah.
Maybe hang it in the trees, your
Must
cooler.
have been a cooler in the car.
Cooler in the car. Ham sandwich, perhaps? Those clever bears.
Interesting.
Thank you for being with us.
Have a great night.